Hi guys, today we're gonna do book content. But it's not what you think. That simply means that I'm not going to review one book like I usually do. As you can guess from the title, I'm going to be reviewing books that I've recently read and turned out to be such letdowns. Now I know these type of videos can sometimes really upset people. So if you loved any of the books on this list, I just want to apologize ahead if it does end up offending you. You can of course share your perspective, like you can let me know why you loved the book in the first place and be nice about it. I would really love to hear your opinion. So with that out of the way, let's start with the first book that I finished last month. And that book is called I Went to See My Father by Shin Kyung-suk. Now, if you're an avid reader, you would probably know who this author is. She is behind the best-selling novel Please Look After Mom, which went on to become a bestseller in South Korea and basically the rest of the world. Now, I wanted to buy Please Look After Mom initially when I went to the bookstore, but they weren't carrying that title at that time. So they did end up recommending this one, which had an equally promising premise. So to give you a brief background of this book, I Went to See My Father is about a woman who returns to her province in South Korea to see her aging father. She's reeling from the loss of her own child, so she's not really in the right mindset, but she goes on anyway. And the rest of the story just picks up from there because the narrator then uncovers pieces of her father's past and everything else. But nothing really dramatic happens. It's just really a slow and winding novel set in the backdrop of a Korean province. So on Goodreads, I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars because I think it gave me a very good background of provincial life in South Korea. There are also some tidbits about the father's time during the Korean War, and I also learned how some Koreans feel when they leave the country and experience culture shock abroad, because that's what happens to the narrator's brother. And basically, there's a very lush picture of South Korean provincial life. So I think that's the plus points of it. I can never win. This is a private subdivision, but there's so many cars and construction going on. Sorry about the background noise. But anyway, what I was trying to say is I think that good points about this book really motivated me to finish the book. However, I don't think I would ever read this again. The overall tone of this book was very melancholic. It was like reading a book while wearing blue shades, if that makes any sense. And it doesn't really help that it really bored me to the core. If this book was marketed as a memoir, I would have understood it more, but it's a novel. It's a work of pure fiction. And yes, I have to repeat myself, it was way too slow and it really bore me out. And it also didn't help that the story was, written in a very non-linear fashion. So it was kind of hard to follow. So I gave the book 2 out of 5 stars, as I said, and I don't think I'll be recommending it to anyone. Okay, so now let's go to the second book on this list. All's Well by Mona Awad. I had such high expectations of this book. I thought that it was going to blow me away. I thought it was gonna stick with me for a long time, but it ended up being another drag. And to be honest, I really did start liking this book when I first started reading it because it was funny. It kind of reminded me of that dramas that Kaylee Kiyoko have recently been starring in, like a zany, unreliable narrator who is infuriating, who is annoying. But you just can't help but root for. And again, I got that in the first few chapters, but it just went super weird towards the end. All's Well follows Miranda, a failed actress and theater director who suffers from chronic pain and is addicted to painkillers. Every doctor she goes to ends up getting frustrated and they just end up casting her aside because they feel like she's just exaggerating her pain. And I just have to highlight that is just great commentary about how society treats women's pains, like our periods, for example, when we're having hellish cramps, like the very feeling that I'm having right now. Most people, like men or women, they just cast you aside because it can't possibly be that painful, right? So yes, I did end up sympathizing with Miranda, but I don't think she showed any form of character development towards the end. She just became an antithesis of a developed character, actually. And I personally felt a little bit uncomfortable that the teacher would see her students as sexual objects or make sexual references, even if she kept it to herself, and even if they were technically college students and were of age. It just didn't seem right. So again, it's another 2 out of 5 stars for All's Well by Mona Awad. I would not recommend this, especially if you are in the middle of a reading slump. I personally don't think the book would be enough to keep people engaged towards the end. It does tend to be overwritten, so be warned. Now, the last book on this list is another book that I have been putting aside for a while, and I shouldn't have read this. It's the Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett, and it's so painful to add this to my list because the book was so promising from the start, and I always wanted to read a comfortable, cottagecore, relaxing book that's about fairies and has a very charming character. Now, the main character of this book, Emily Wilde, is exactly that. She's charming and she is extremely likable and she's hardworking and she's just a great example for girls out there. That is until a certain character ruins her, but I'll get to that in a bit. So the first few chapters of this book is admittedly hard to get into, but I did eventually pull through. The main character of this book is actually a Cambridge professor that goes to a remote village to study the somewhat violent fairies in the area. Accompanying her, of course, is her loyal dog, Shadow. Now, a lot of my Goodreads mutuals actually love this book, but I personally think that I would rate this book highly, if not for one character, and that is Wendell Bumblebee. That was a little bit too much, was it? Now, this might be a very unpopular opinion, but the man is just so annoying and self-centered, and that love story just came out of nowhere, and suddenly they wanted to get married. Him and Emily wanted to get married, and I don't think it really fit in with Emily's character and her entire storyline in general. I mean, of course, women can be strong-willed and smart and still find love. I truly believe that. Of course, but I don't think it was necessary to this plot. Especially since I found out that this is actually book 1 of a series. I would have rather seen Emily and Wendell's love story build up towards the second or third book, so it's not like their relationship goes from 0 to 100 all of a sudden. Or, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have Wendell Bumblebee at all. As for the writing, I also felt like this book was a little bit overwritten. Now, I love me a nice quirky fantasy, but this is one doesn't really know what it is. It can be incredibly fluffy at some moments, and it can be violent and super dark in another chapter. And I also feel like several aspects of the plot were fighting each other. Like, I don't know what was the main conflict. I feel like there were so many sub-stories, there were so many characters that really didn't move the story along or didn't really make it easy to follow. But I do see that this would be a great Netflix series for some reason. I think if they remade it to a live action to the tone of Enola Holmes, it would work out. But as a book, maybe not that much. So like the rest of the books on this list, I rated it a 2 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Now, I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer, but my last 3 reads were really disappointing. If you love this book, please do not fight me. That's just my opinion. We all have different tastes and we all should have the right to voice our opinions. And again, if you like this book, please let me know what you loved about it and let's have a really friendly conversation in the comments. Now, you guys might be wondering why I even bother finishing a book when I find the first few chapters, unreadable or like uninteresting. Well, where I'm from, books cost a lot. They're not the currency that in my country isn't as strong as a dollar. So the books here are, they're a luxury. They're an investment. And even if I wasn't running this channel, I would still end up devouring books. That being said, I really want to make the most out of my investment and I really want to finish the book And I know some people could argue and say that, well, maybe you should have just sold it to somebody who appreciated it, who would end up appreciating it. And I honestly think that's true. I just want to finish it myself first. And to be very honest, it's not that easy to sell secondhand books. So, with that out of the way, I want to introduce my current read. It is Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung. It is a series of weird, twisty tales. I just started yesterday. I finished like one short story last night. And I have another batch of orders from Amazon that I can't wait to share with you guys as well. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, give me a follow. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!